this is a video on how to sew up and finish Emma the bunny. So once you've crocheted all your parts, do use all the other videos in terms of crocheting all your parts. This one is going to show you how to sew up once you have finished. So what you will need is the parts that you have made. You'll need your eye thread and your nose thread. If you bought a kit, then that will be included. If not, and you're following the book, then you really need to just look for some black contrasting yarn or thread, or if you want to, you could always use safety eyes. And then I've gone for a soft brown mushroom in this case in order to sew the nose on, but you could use the same black thread if you wanted to, or you could go for a different colour. And then you're going to need some stuffing. And the important tool actually really in order to put it together will be, number one, a strong wool needle. So again, these are included in your kits. If you have purchased a kit, it'll just be stuck to the inside of your box is your metal wool needle. And then actually a surprising tool, but a very, very useful one, is a soft grip crochet hook. And that's because what we're actually going to do is we've finished the crochet, but we're going to use the handle to push the stuffing into the pieces. So what you've got is you've got a body head, 4 limbs and 2 ears. Now, what you need to do is get your stuffing and keep it in a big clump as much as possible. Don't be tempted to break it up and roll it into small pieces, and then feed that stuffing into the body. Using the handle. Like that. And when it comes to stuffing, less is more. You're using a lovely soft bouncy yarn. You don't want to overstuff it. You want to put enough in that you see the shape that you've crocheted so the shape emerges, but you don't want it to be too stiff and firm. So once you've got all the pieces stuffed, it's time to gather the stitches. So this is the front of Emma the bunny's face, and all of the Edward's Menagerie animals, no matter which one you're making, if it is in standard form, will be started from the back of the head and crocheted towards the front. So whether that's the elephant, whether it's a dog, no matter who it is, they'll be starting at the back of the head and you'll finish on the front of the face like this. So what you need to do, thread up your piece with your wool needle and just gather the remaining stitches by going in and out through that final round of V's like that. In and around a stitch. Then the same with the top of the body. And then I always sew up in the same order. So what I've got is Emma the bunny's head and body. I've got my wool needle still attached onto a nice long thread that comes up off the bottom of my body. Tip your head backwards and sew a couple of stitches between the head and the body. Now, I left a long thread on the body when I'd made it. If you haven't done that, you can always rejoin a piece of yarn onto your body, and then you'll be able to just set off doing exactly the same thing. So a few stitches on the front, and then work right the way around the back, just reinforcing that join between the head and the body. So head attached to the body. Now it's time to attach the limbs in place. And as you can see, just to talk through that there, that if you decided to add the centralizer point in, so at the point in your pattern where it says to add a marker into the decrease, you'd have a little marker there which would form the center of your tummy. But if you've not done that, it's a tummy, definitely a tummy, not a bottom, that forms this shape. So when you've got your pear shaped in your body, make sure that your tummy is facing forward. Then when it comes to the 4 legs, put your stuffing into the bottom. So you're just putting stuffing into that bottom bulbous piece there. and then sew the leg closed. Position the leg on the seam between the head and the body, and this will help to reinforce the head as well. And then sew right the way down one side of the leg. Turn that over and sew the other side. So then probably the most important thing when it comes to sewing up your Ed's animals is to do with the position of these bottom legs. And that's because as you sew these on, it will dictate how well your animal does or does not sit up. So if you've got these two top ones on and you're looking straight down at your animal like that, what you want to do is imagine a line coming down the centre of the body onto this bottom circle like this, and then divide that bottom circle into thirds like that. And you want to sew your legs on the line that would form a third. And if you do that, what it means is that the legs will sit forward nicely when your animal's sitting up, and it will support the tummy and support any weight through the head. So you always know that if you are making your animal to sit on a shelf, to sit as a mascot on a desk or something like that, your animal will always sit up by itself. It gives it much more character when you don't have to lean it backwards against something. It looks like it might just come to life when you're not looking, rather than it having to slouch backwards with something propping it up. So sew along one side like that, flip the leg over, and then sew along the other side in the same way. So next, let's sew on the tail. And my tip really on sewing on a tail would be to sit your animal up, because your animal, now you've sewn those legs in the right place, should be able to put the hands effectively on the knees, and then it should sit up nicely like that. So when it comes to the tail, I've added a little bit of stuffing in just so it's 3D. Gather those last few stitches, and then position your tail where you want it to be. But if you sit it down, you can often get that more accurate than if you just sew it onto the back. It's very easy to end up with your tail halfway up the back. Right, now for the ears. Now, Emma the Bunny obviously has these two really distinct floppy ears. If you find that you've got a little twist in your ears as you have made them, so you see how there, when it's folded flat with that at one end, if you find that you've got a little twist in your ear, just manipulate that ear until you feel like it sits flattest and you're happiest with it. Don't live with the twist. You don't have to. You can just manipulate that a little bit so it sits flat, so that you'll get a really nice finish to your ear. Sew it closed again in the same way that we did with the legs, because that'll make it easiest for you to just be sewing it on as a flat piece. And then position the ear on the top of the head. Now, the ears really dictate the personality of your bunny. She will look more active and alive the higher they are. She will look quite sad if you go too low. So this really is about you putting the character into your bunny as you are doing it. I tend to go somewhere in the middle like that. So I've got the top two corners effectively of the head about there and there. And once you've got one in place, the most important thing is to make sure that you balance it out on the other side. So just turn it over and eyeball the distance between the shoulder to that ear, because you want to make sure that that is about the same on both sides. And then using the lines in the rounds that you've crocheted, track that across the top to there. And then you know that your bunny will be as symmetrical as she can be. Right, so the last thing I've got to do is go and snip all those ends off, but let's just put the eyes and nose into place. So again, this is really going to add the character to your animal. But remember, you can always snip them off and go again. So one thing just to mention, if you are someone who's going to use safety eyes, you needed to do that before you closed up the nose. Now you can do that at the very beginning, but I actually would find it easier to sew the rest of the body parts in place, but leave that nose open, then add your safety eyes and gather that last. Just because in the same way that I embroider the eyes last, I think it's easier to position your eyes once everything else is in place. So bring your wool through, or your thread that you're going to sew these eyes on with. And all you're going to do is do 2 wraps like that. Come across and track across your line so that you know that you're on the same line as before. I've gone slightly up there. There we go. So come across like that. Now, when it comes to sewing on facial features, the bigger you make the eyes, the cuter your animal will look. So you don't have to stop at 2 wraps if you don't want to. If you go for a 3rd one, you'll just get slightly bigger eyes, which will make your animal look younger and cuter. On average, I use 2, but that really is down to you. Again, personal preference when you're adding the character onto your animal. Then when it comes to Emma the bunny, her nose is exactly the same technique as I've just done with the eyes there, but all I'm going to do is sew horizontally just above that point where I've gathered the stitches in the centre of the face. Like that. And back through. So all I need to do is now sew off all my ends, and Emma the bunny, an absolute TOFT classic, second thing that I ever crocheted, but still one of my absolute favourites, and obviously goes down so well every time, especially with people that are having new babies. Emma the bunny is complete.